So welcome everybody. We're here in the fantastic Abbey Road Studio 3 for the 2018 recordproduction.com meetup. And I'm talking to Lester Smith, who I think I'm right in saying, I hope you don't mind me saying this, you're the longest standing employee at Abbey Road, is that right?
I am.
Is it over 50 years now?
Yeah, 50 years will do. I hope to do a few more, I must admit.
Great.
I haven't had my marching orders yet.
Good. I think I'm right in saying you started off working at Hayes.
Yes.
And then came here in 1970.
Yes.
And I'm curious to know how that felt, because were you Beatles fan first?
I worked in tape records at Hayes, and that's making pre-recorded commercial tapes, quarter-inch reels. And of course, we went through the whole Beatle repertoire, churning them out for sale in shops, reel to reel, you see. And one day my boss said, they're looking for someone to look after the cutting lathes at Abbey Road. And he also said, you'd be working under Len Page, and he's about to retire, so it would be a good move if you went and applied for the job. So I went along, applied for the job, and got the job. So I started off looking after cutting lathes, and we had to do sound checks to make sure that grooves and the frequencies were correct. Of course, the gramophone record in those days, in the 70s, were our only product, the only product from EMI. So we relied on our record sales, 7-inch and vinyl LPs. And
you're still involved with the maintenance of the lathes today, is that right?
Unfortunately, yes. After a couple of years looking after the lathes, Len Page hadn't retired yet, and the studio decided, let's have a special technical department, because when things went wrong back in the 70s, any engineer sort of started trying to fix something, and it was such a mess that the management said, let's have a dedicated team. One chap to look after tape machines, one to look after microphones, one to look after the mixing consoles. And they said, what would I like to do? And I said, microphones, because I knew nothing about them. And I fed up with tape machines. That was what my job at Hayes was. So from then on, and then of course, at the end of the 90s, manufacture of vinyl disappeared slowly. Our big record factory at Hayes, 130 presses, that closed down. We went CD-wise like everyone did. And it's pretty amazing that we started vinyl again. Pretty amazing. We've got 4 rooms cutting discs now.
How much has changed? Because I think, am I right in saying that Alan Blumlein designed the original lathes that were used here, is that right?
Yeah, pretty right. When we started as the gramophone company in 1898, it was the gramophone and typewriter company. And then we dropped the typewriter bit after 1908. And the gramophone, it was all acoustic recording, you know, with a horn and a small orchestra bunch around the horn, sometimes a second horn for a singer, sometimes a third horn for a piano. Got good fun in those days, I imagine. But when the electrical age came along, we were desperate to find a place, instead of taking our gear out to music halls to record, let's have our own permanent place. So that was where we chose this spot. There was a house for sale, 3 Abbey Road, and it had a massive garden, 150-foot long garden. So they said, this is ideal. We'll keep the house and we'll build number 1 studio, number 2 studio, number 3 studio. Wallace, Gilbert and partners were the architects, and they designed the Hoover building, Western Avenue. Some know that. It's a very Art Deco. It was the time, 1931, Art Deco. So there are some Art Deco features in the various studios. You have to look very carefully. But it was the first studio, music studio in the world, and they did an amazing job building a studio of the right proportions. Number 2 studio, every musician played in there, and I won't mention the Beatles. And
You can mention Beatles.
and it's just perfect for all types of music. And that was one of the first studios. And number 1 is can accommodate 200 musicians and choir. There's loads of room there.
So this is a really important question. You were on the technical side. Does that mean you had to wear one of the white lab coats?
There was one hanging behind my door
Right.
in my technical room. I eventually took it home so I could work under my Morris Minor with it on.
Okay, so in name only.
So I don't have it on anymore.
So, I mean, I don't imagine you thought you would still be here 50 years later when you started work there. I mean, you mentioned that the technical department was new, so there was nobody to show you the ropes, and you knew nothing about mics. If you could go back now to yourself 50 years ago, have you got any hints or tips you could give yourself about doing this job and doing it well?
No, I did it as perfectly as possible.
Excellent answer.
And I had to learn from other mics. Having about 20 U67s, I could check them all, I could measure the noise. EMI were very forward thinking. I had a soundproof box. You know, to listen to a valve microphone, you need to listen to it properly in a soundproof box. So you could turn up the volume and measure minus 115 or so decibels. Then you'd hear any noises, extraneous noises that the recording engineers wouldn't like to hear. So with all those, and the sound level of every mic, I checked and tested. Another thing EMI designed, there's only 3 in the world, that's my sound gun. Unfortunately, it's run out of batteries. And modern batteries, Type C, they don't make them the same size as they used to, and I can't get them in. So when I press the switch, people used to, it used to emit white noise. And there was a phone meter on top to measure, so I get the same level every time. And I've got the microphone same distance away every time. So I get a standard of every type of microphone. I can measure the output, know what it should be. And soundproof box, know the noise of a microphone, what it should be. So that way you build up how things should work and what they shouldn't be doing and not doing and doing.
And is it right that you keep records of all of those microphones?
Not gramophone records.
Sorry. Details.
Details.
Technical specifications.
Someone stole my book, it's very valuable. So that's what I did in my idle time in 1972. And I've got every microphone and every, let's say, there's some you recognise, RCA 44s and 4038s. My method of testing with the noise gun to point it at the right place on the microphone. And
how many mics are there in the collection?
over 800. So about 50 different types of microphone. And vintage microphones from the 50s, right through to the latest Browner microphones and Geffel and Sontronics and everything that Sony microphones, Shure microphones, everything practically.
Yeah, fantastic. I know you brought some along to show us. I think in the session earlier, when we were recording the band, there was one of the vintage microphones, a ribbon microphone, in with the drum kit. Is that right?
I saw it there, yes. We've got two of those here, fortunately. I discovered these at our archives at Hayes, where our factory used to be. We still have an archive with documents going back to 1898 when we were the gramophone company, plus a museum which has got all the artifacts we've ever built sort of stored away in there. And I discovered these microphones and I said, can we have them back at Abbey Road? Because they were designed by EMI. It says EMI Research Laboratories, microphone type RM1B, number 35. And I think we only built 35 of them, but it's a 1-inch ribbon in there, magnet. You all know how ribbon mics work. I won't take it apart. And one of our engineers, Peter Cobbin, he always used this on every film score he recorded. In the 20 years he was here, he always put this microphone up because it gives a certain colour. And lots of films have bits of period scenes in them. So he could always mix this particular mic in, which was nice to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic.
And the RCA 44, which I think was in there as well. I think we bought these in the 30s. That's when they first came, about 1936. And that's almost a 2-inch ribbon and 2 horseshoe magnets inside, and very chunky. But brand new ones can be bought today, made by AEA, Wes Dooley. And this weighs about 10 kilo.
Whew.
He makes the one with ceramic magnets, which are about only 2 kilos in weight. So he's got very powerful magnets. So you can get 2 types. You can reproduce this one, or he can make the ceramic magnet type.
Did you have the AKG D19? Do you have one there?
I don't know. I told the chap to pick out some odd microphones.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think he managed that one.
Okay. Well, I was just interested to talk about that one because I think I'm right in saying they're incredibly delicate. Is that right?
AKG 19s were a very good microphone. Ringo had them as a hi-hat and on his bass drum. And he also used D20s, AKG D20s on his bass drum. And he kept blowing the D20s. And about 1965, the manager at the time said, these microphones are about 40 guineas pounds each. Give him the D19 instead for his bass drum. So he changed over to D19s because they're only about 20 quid each. That's a fact because on the records of all the Beatles songs, you can see where he went from D20 to D19s. Perhaps he liked the sound better, I don't know, but that is a fact.
But they've almost all been damaged, is that right?
Yeah,
Because
they're good mics, and they were good mics. They've all got damaged. When they get dropped, the wire around the diaphragm is very, very fine, about a quarter of the thickness of a hair. And a drop will just shatter that, break that bond between the connection and the wire. So I've tried to repair them, but it's very difficult to join another wire to the broken bit. Funny enough, after my interview, some of you have seen, someone rang me up from Germany saying they worked with AKG for 28 years, and would they like him to help me get more of these working? So I've said, well, I'll think about it. Because he wants money, of course. But
there's a famous story about Jeff Emmerich being the first person to move the bass drum mic closer to the kit than the Abbey Road rules previously allowed. I was curious to know whether that had anything to do with them getting broken, and whether you'd had any other kind of conversations with him or other engineers over the years about, the creative ways they were using the equipment and the problems that might cause you.
Well, Jeff was very creative, and I think a lot of that's been written up Brian and Kevin recording the Beatles book is absolutely a gem, a Bible of what the Beatles did. I don't know. Okay. I think they did experiment, particularly Jeff, to try and get different sounds. The Beatles were always experimenting. I don't need to tell you all this.
But they didn't damage the equipment. It wasn't like you'd keep having these pieces of gear come back to you and you say, oh, he's done it again.
No, I wasn't there then.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
Okay, fair enough. So I know that you're basically in charge of all of the analog gear here, and the maintenance side of it. I'm just curious, because now we can get plug-in emulations of some of the classic pieces of kit, like the double tracking and just recently the mastering console came out. And I was just curious about your opinion about that. Do you think that's a waste of time? Do you think they do capture some of that flavour? Is that a worthwhile exercise?
I think it's a great idea. Not everyone can afford to hire studios. They want to use some of our gear. So plugins is ideal. You can sell an awful lot of plugins and people enjoy them. And Peter Cobbin, for one, always analysed the plugin until it was right. So he had the proper gear here, he'd have the plugin and compare. And if the plugin wasn't as good as the proper gear, he'd send it back and they'd have to do, amend it. Put it right.
That's good to hear.
So we were very strict on that.
I mean, another thing that Abbey Road traditionally was very strict about was just testing gear when it came into the building. And you mentioned you've got some modern mics like the Sontronics and things. I was curious about what it is. I've also heard you say that a mic has to be really good for it to find a place in the cabinet, given how many great mics you've already got. And I was just curious about how you assess them. I mean, is it based on the engineers use them and say, oh, we love these, you need to have some of these? Or do you do technical tests on the mics? How does it work?
I always do a technical test first, measure the noise coming out of the mic in the soundproof box and measure its output. And then I ask the recording engineers to assess it, put it out, listen to it. That's not so easy as it sounds because every sound engineer are busy on a job, a film job or a band or something. And to put out an odd microphone, they've got to be tuned in really to put it somewhere important and remember to listen to it because it's going to be part of their recording. So it sometimes takes a long time. I often send back a microphone after 4 weeks and said, no one's had time to listen to it yet. So having so many wonderful microphones to choose from, we don't really want any more new ones, except some special ones maybe.
Just thinking about some of the other mics you've got there, I know that John Leckie is going to be talking to people soon. And I think I'm pretty sure he's said in the past that all he needs is a U87, an SM58, and a D12. We've got all of those.
Don't show people that.
Okay, am I allowed to tell them what it says? It says Olympic Studios. Oops.
Well, it's added to our numbers, you see, when Olympic Studios closed down. We belonged to Virgin and then EMI, and things changed, don't they? If you get sold out, and we're now Universal Music now. But it's good because they've spent a lot of money with us, but built a new Atmos studio out there. Quite amazing, it is.
John was saying there never used to be any Shure mics here.
Is John still around?
Is that right? I don't know if he's here at the moment. Oh, is he? Yeah, there he is.
Hey. Not time yet.
That's right. I left here in 1978, and I never saw a Shure microphone, an SM57 or a 58, so I left.
So he didn't use it.
Ah, there you go. That's an unusual take on it.
EU mic.
This is it says, better 58.
It's fantastic. Well, I want to say thank you so much for talking to us. Is there something else you'd like to show us?
Yeah. How long have we got?
There's this.
Yes, there's this. My heroes are Alan Blumlein, who designed so many things. You started off with the cutter. I didn't finish that story because when we first opened in 1931, number one opened in November. Sir Edward Elgar opened it. There's a photograph at the top of the stairs of him and the orchestra. And we had to buy electrical equipment, and the only available really was from America. Western Electric were building cutter heads, electric cutter heads, and microphones and recording equipment, amplifiers. And they didn't sell their products. You had to pay a royalty. So we had at least 3 cutting bits for 1, 2, and 3. We at least had 3 cutter heads. And we paid them a royalty of 1 penny, 1 cent per disc we sold. And in the 1930s, we were selling something like 25 million discs a year. 78 RPM. But also at that time, there was a depression in America, which affected our sales over here. And Columbia, the graphophone company in East London, was a rival to HMV. That was our EMI company. It wasn't EMI until 1931. So Columbia and HMV decided to join partners that would reduce the amount of presses and work that could be done. It would save a lot of money, all being one. So at that time, Alan Blumlein was working for Columbia. He had started work there in 1928. So he was now with us here, and his first job was to redesign the cutter head so it would be our own cutter head, not the American. And he did that. He also designed the amplifiers and the playback system. And he had another bright idea, because when he went to the cinema with his wife, he said, look, the sound's only coming out of the middle of the screen. I can make the sound come out anywhere along that screen. So he went back, designed a stereo microphone, 2 ribbons at 90 degrees to each other. And we've got one in our archive, one of these. And he, by 1934, he was recording 78 RPM records in stereo. We've got one in our archives which has a jazz track and a classical track on the same groove. It's amazing. But he did lots of previous tests. He had a fire engine running around the field at Hayes, recording the sound of the bells ringing, etc. And he had a sound of the train coming into the station, and he had little plays with people talking and acting on a stage, and he was recording that in. He called it by duo recording, and.
Did he invent binaural recording?
Binaural, that's it. Yes, binaural. Yeah, and
also this mic, was that he did also?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I just finished that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course, his main idea was a stereo track on film. It was the film he was more concerned with, because 78 records was totally impractical for people to buy stereo then. He wanted it for the film business, because you had an optical soundtrack. It was easy to put 2 down there. The management weren't interested, so the whole thing got shelved. And obviously when Sony came along 25 years later and said, we've invented stereo, we said, no, you haven't. So Alan Blumlein's microphone he did design for us. It's not the stereo one, it's the normal mono one. I'm not allowed to show it. It's actually in the shop next door in a glass case. But we have used it here. The actual one, not this, not this paper one. But that's what it's the proper, it's the right stand for it. And Alexander Armstrong, for instance, he sang First World War songs through it 2 years ago in number 2 studio.
Right.
And
How does it
Andy
sound?
Dubman recorded it.
Yeah.
Oh, there are 2 of them we've got in a box under glass. In fact, look how good they're doing there. And one of them's working, one of them isn't. So, and it sounds good. It's
Good.
very period sound, which is, you want something that sounds First World Warish. Okay, so he's my hero because when he'd done all that electrical recording stuff, he and his team went on to develop 405 TV for Ali Pali. They broadcast from Ali Pali along with John Logie Baird as alternate weeks they were broadcasting. And that was where EMI TV developed from. And then the war came along and we wanted some way to know when the bombers are coming over from Germany. And his team went on to help design radar. So he was a genius. And unfortunately, he got killed in a Halifax bomber along with about 6 other scientists testing out the radar. The magnetron particularly was his main invention.
Sounds like without him, I mean, you wouldn't have had a cutting lathe, you wouldn't have had microphones.
Oh, he'd done that first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it.
Without
it's
him,
amazing.
that's right, a genius.
Yeah.
And not only a genius, every genius needs someone to turn things practically into a working product. And that was Horace Holman, was his engineer. And it's called the HB1. And Horace was the H and B was the Blumlein. And he never put himself first. He was very, genius and condescending chap.
So would you say that's your favourite bike? I was going to finish up by asking you if you had a favourite and what it would be.
Well, it would be if I had one. in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
47s I like. Where have they gone? 47s, 48s. Oh, I can you see it there?
There was one.
Anyway, you all know the 47, 48s. Through Chandler in America, we've produced a 47, but it's got a red 47 amplifier. There was another amplifier we built in the 50s to go along with our first recording desks that we designed and built. And they've produced this microphone with a attenuator on it, which gives a good, healthy output straight from the microphone.
I think, is Nigel here? He had a question. You had a question, didn't you, about...
Yes. I've heard that you know what to do when the VF14 breaks. Are you going to tell us?
Well, I make sure I don't break one first, but some people do. No, they get dropped, not very often. They go noisy, don't they? Like any valve. The F86s in a 67 will go noisy. I sort of cook them a bit. I cook them up a bit.
Your secret.
Well, not totally. You don't know what temperature to cook them at.
Is it a humidifier or an oven?
It's more oven-like.
If only Neumann had known that back in the day.
They weren't interested. They want to sell new microphones. After the 47, which they started designing after the war, and the best... Does anyone know what this is? Sorry.
Which one are you looking for?
It's here.
OMG.
Who knows that? You've seen that before. Not many people. That's the valve for the U-47, and made by Telefunken. And because it was made for the war, German war communications, Telefunken only made enough for that use only. So by the mid-50s, it was obsolete. That's why they're so rare and wanted today, because if you've got a U-47 without this valve, it's like the heart. You haven't got the sound of the 47. And I'm mixing 47 with 48 because the 48 was just 6 years after the 47, and it had the option of figure of 8. Again, a Neumann invention.
Is it right that they would ship both capsules with the 48?
Yes, you could buy it with the body, because figure of 8 needs 3 contacts, front and back, and the 47 just needs the 2 contacts. So you could buy a 47 head along with the 48, and you could just interchange heads. So by 1960, they'd produced the U67 microphone with this 3-position switch on the capsule. They're very innovative, the Neumann people. New ideas, clever ideas, yeah.
Yeah. Did we have any other questions anybody would like to ask? That valve didn't work, by the way. I've seen them on eBay for £3,000, so that's how important they are to people in the recording business. I couldn't mend this one. I wish I could take it apart, stick it together.
So, would it be possible to remake that now? Or would it just be too expensive?
Quite a few companies, not.
They tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't come across a successful one. Some people tried putting a smaller, because one thing is it's totally non-standard plug-in. So you've got to start with something that will be interchangeable. And I have seen some people take a miniature valve and put it inside, make a socket. They've made their own, made it so it's interchangeable. And I've tried one and it works for a while and then it stops working, mainly because it gets too hot inside a cover. Has anyone heard of any thing? Someone making them? No. Lots of people ask me that. Why don't we sit down and make one? Why don't anyone make them? Because it's a bit like if you want to make a light bulb, how are you going to do that? You've got to build a factory. You've got to. You need to sell at least 1,000 to get your money back, and so it's just not worth it.
So that begs the question: what's in the newer 47s then? If it clearly is not that.
EF86, EF806 is I don't say they're
No, they're not identical.
Identical.
But so it's a successor to what you.
Yeah, EF86s are pretty good.
Right.
First class, high gain, low noise valve, which most microphones. I don't know what Trevor uses.
I've been using some very new old stock Mallards at the moment.
Oh, brilliant!
But they're like hen's teeth.
They are too old original valves, brand new. If anyone's got any in their pocket, I love them.
I mean, I bought them all.
You bought them all.
Is there a secret stash here somewhere?
I've got a few spares of these still.
Can you tell us about the mic on the stand here? Was that also Alan Blumlein, I think?
No, this was the early stereo setups testing, because any new thing, you've got to work out all your parameters, distance apart and where they should stand if you're trying a new way of recording. And this was something that we've taken the 56, Neumann 56, Neumann M49, and put them together like this. Whoops. This was made by EMI, this special stand. It looks rather good, sort of modern art almost. And our engineers, who are still alive, Chris Parker in the 50s, he was working here, mostly working stereo, classical of course, and Bob Gooch and David Bell, they were all early sound engineers. And another idea they had...
It's a mid-side setup, is it?
The 56 is variable front and back, and yeah. And the other idea they had, it's a bit loose, was cut a hole in the 49 case, and you could push the 54. We also, at the same time of buying the 47s and 48s, we bought the 53s, 54s and 56s miniature microphones by Neumann. Again, don't know if people have seen these. Miniature valve mics. They've got a AC701. You have to solder it in. It's a wire-ended valve. And Keith Grant from Olympic, they were his favourite microphones to use. He did a lot of film work. And they still, I've got, these are available to use, and some engineers do ask for them.
And the idea of the hole was to get the capsules as close together as possible.
Yes, you've got the 49 and you've got this capsule. That's omnidirectional, and the 53 could be in there. Just to get the centres of the diaphragms as close to each other as possible. I don't think it was very successful, actually.
Right.
But
I haven't seen that before.
But they asked me to make a hole in there so they could try it.
It's brilliant. You can see the melted edges.
As you might guess, I'm a sort of a hoarder, and I keep everything that was ever what we've ever done.
So that somewhere here there's a room where we're just surrounded by the 800 mics.
Not surrounded.
Okay.
It's a sort of a long piece of string, if you like.
Right.
A long series of cupboards.
Okay.
Um,
Kept under lock and key, or because is it right that anybody who comes here can use any of those classic mics if they like?
Yeah. Or 800 if you want.
Sounds like a challenge.
If we had enough power to do that.
Brilliant. Any other questions?
Lester, do you have any of the Decca modded 49s with the solid state?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I remember they were converted back again, weren't they? It wasn't such a good idea after all. They converted them back to valve. They bought up all the AC701s they could, put them back together.
Callum Malcolm's got a couple of them, and he said they sound very, very different, but we're just
Yes.
wondering if there were many of them left in circulation, the actual...
We had the sale of the century in 1982, I think, and Decca put in a lot of their mics at that time to be sold. And people buy them and they say, I've got a mic that Beatles used. And they didn't, it came from Decca. And not only the 49, the 50s we particularly like. And most of our film sessions, classical sessions, we've got a Decca tree. It's the only time I'm allowed to say Decca. With 3 50s on them. And then you get the whole sound of the orchestra in number 1, 110-foot long studio. It just picked up everything. And all the musicians are mic'd up, of course, individually. You're feeling sleepy now?
Not at all. It's been brilliant. It's been fascinating. I mean, unless there's any other questions. No? Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you. And here's to many more years of employment at Abbey Road.
Absolutely, yeah. My best hobby. It's my favourite hobby, working here. I've got 2 hobbies. That's one of them.
Dream job, I think, for most people here.
Yeah, it is.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I should imagine. Thank you. Is John here? Come and sit down.